editor used a Sony FX3 to shoot the entire movie. Well, going through all that footage, I noticed one very common thing with all the behind the scenes, and that was they were using some sort of rig with the Sony FX3 and their Ronin RS2 gimbal.
This is my version of the RS3 Pro shoulder mount gimbal rig setup inspired by the creator. Now I've taken the basis of what Jonathan showed in his video and I've modified it to basically fit to my needs based on what I would want to have when I'm shooting. So starting at the very back, we've got an Andy Cine power delivery plate. I always prefer to use a power delivery plate on a gimbal setup or on a handheld setup like there, simply because it means you can really easily hot swap things. You don't have to unplug cables from the battery itself. You just literally plug everything into that and then you can kill switch it as well, which is really handy when you've got things like the monitor, which will be doing a slow drain on your batteries. That just prevents that from happening. Then on that power plate, I've got a cable coming out of the D-tap. This is a cable by ZitATable. It's a D-tap splitter, which if I come in here is a 4-way D-tap splitter. So right now I've got one D-tap powering the gimbal and one D-tap powering the monitor and wireless transmitter. But in theory I could also then power the camera if I wanted to, and maybe even something else like the handle or a wireless follow focus if I wasn't using the DJI one. So then coming along, I've got my first point of contact for mounting the gimbal. I'm using the Spider Crabs by iFootage because these are fantastic. I've reviewed them before and I really stand by the fact that every filmmaker should have a few of these in their camera bag. No question, they are fantastic. And that is mounted to a 15mm rod cheese plate so that I can just mount it directly into a 1/4-20 in there with locking pins so that it's not going to twist on me. That then comes up to rest underneath this, which is the small rig power delivery system for the RS3 Pro. I believe it might also work for the RS2. I'm not certain though. That way, that is one sturdy as hell point of contact at the base of the gimbal. This power delivery system then gets powered with a LEMO cable that comes along here and into my D-tap splitter. Then right here, we've got the second point of contact for the gimbal. This is using the NATO rail that's on the power delivery system. And that is mounted to a little NATO rail clamp, which is then attached to this 15mm rod. That 15mm rod is then in turn attached to this 15mm rod connector, which is connecting this system here to the main 15mm rod setup. This is clamped down really tight. It's not going anywhere. And that gives this a really nice sturdy second point of contact for the gimbal. That way the gimbal is basically met with 2 points of contact that are sturdy as hell. It can easily carry the weight of a mirrorless system with a nice heavy lens. I reckon you could even stick an FX6 on there, no problem. Then coming around to the other side, we've got the briefcase handle that came with the gimbal, just so that I have something to carry it in kind of briefcase mode. It also just really helps to be able to put it when you're bringing it up onto your shoulder or taking it off your shoulder. Now, I don't fully trust that NATO rail mount that's on the power delivery system simply because it's attached with an M5 screw. That's all. That means that you're carrying the weight of all of this on this handle, trusting that one M5 screw. And I don't. So what I've done is added another 15mm single clamp with a NATO rail mount on it, a big long NATO rail, and then I've mounted the handle to the other end of that NATO rail. That is really sturdy. That does not move at all, and I'm not worried about that coming loose because the only way it would come loose is if this 15mm rod slips, and it's not going to slip. So then coming around to the front of it here, we've got this small rig double rosette arm, and the rosettes are slightly tilted so that you get a bit of an angle, extruding angle on your handles, so it's a bit more comfortable to hold. And on those arms, I have two of these small rig extendable NATO rail arms that I've shown in some other camera builds I've done before. These are really, really good because they allow you to easily and quickly adjust the distance and height of your handles when you're in a shoulder rig. And then they also turn and pack up really small when you're actually having to pack this away. So yeah, highly recommend these. They're really sturdy and they do a wonderful job of versatility for your rigs. So on this side, I have a small rig handle, which is, quite cozy. It's not the most comfortable, but it's fairly cozy. That is attached with a little little DIY get me up of NATO rails there. I really love the NATO rail system. It's fantastic, provided you really clamp everything down properly so that nothing slips. Then we have another one of the Spider Crab's friction arms, and this is holding my monitor. Now you'll notice this NATO rail clamp up here. The reason is that I want to be able to remove this by just undoing that latch, remove this entirely, unplug my cables there, and stick it on my handheld system if I want to do a switch quickly. I don't want to have to mess around with tools, and that allows me to do that very easily. All I have to do then is go into the menu and flip the horizontal and vertical on the monitor. So that way I've got my monitor, which is kind of just below eyeline level, next to my left hand while I'm operating. It doesn't get in the way of the camera, it doesn't interfere with the camera, but it allows me to see on a nice 7-inch screen what I'm actually shooting. That's really great. If we come around to the back of the monitor, we've got the Hollyland Mars 300. Now this is the demo version, as you see it says demo there. This is the demo version I got from them about like 5 years ago or 4 years ago to test out in a review. And it might not be the best wireless transmitter, but it's never been an issue for me. It's never failed me or not met the needs that I had. So I'm sticking with it. Stick with what you have. So this is taking one of the feeds out from the monitor, and that is then transmitting to the receiver. Now, I currently have the receiver set up on a big screen in the studio. That way a client can watch what is happening during the shoot in the studio on a big screen. They don't have to be kind of waiting to watch any rushes. They can see it, they can input on the fly. But I could very easily switch that receiver onto another monitor for focus puller or onto a portable director's monitor if I were doing a shoot out and about. Now I've got a nifty little adapter in here, which is allowing me to have a dual NPF battery mount. So one side of it is mounted into the monitor, and the other side of it is mounted into the wireless transmitter. If I just take this out so you can see, one side is NPF and then the other side is also NPF. So you've got a dual NPF, which then goes out to a DTAP cable, which then runs over into my DTAP splitter. Then the HDMI cable that I'm using here is a very nice, small, kind of very flexible HDMI cable, but it is an 8K ready HDMI cable. So it gets full data transmission, which is really nice. I can get a full 1080 or 4K readout if I'm going to a recorder. That is then spooled up there. And basically what I'm doing is running this along here, and I've tied it underneath the caddy part of the gimbal, so that I have an HDMI cable ready to go into camera here. The reason I've done this is that I hate having an HDMI cable that runs down here over to the monitor. To me, that always creates a roll imbalance on the gimbal, and it just massively increases the risk of tugging on something and breaking an HDMI port, either on a monitor or a camera or both. And that is not what you need. Now, in an ideal world, I'd have a gimbal that has an HDMI throughput here. So I can just run a tiny little patch cable to there, and then that throughputs along the gimbal to an HDMI port out here. And then I can, completely eliminate the need for cables dangling. But this is my best solution at the moment, and it works pretty well. Then if we come around to the other side, we've got this guy here, which is the Tilta advanced grip handle thing. Now this is designed for the Tilta advanced grip, but I find that this works really nicely as a handle for my right hand to be able to control the gimbal while it's on my shoulder. And it gives me control over everything, all of my axes, my modes. It hits the Bluetooth paired trigger to record the camera, so I don't have to come up and press it manually up here. It's really nice. And if I'm using DJI's focus motor, it can control that as well with the wheel on the back. And it also pairs automatically with the Nucleus Nano. So, or any of Tilta's focus motors. So if I'm using a third-party Tilta focus motor, then that'll control it too. So that's really nice. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about trying this thing out on my next commercial gig. It's definitely, just testing in the studio, way more comfortable to operate at a kind of eyeline level for a much longer period of time. And the pretty cool thing about it is you just have to flip that handle rosette mount around, and suddenly you have a shoulder-mounted gimbal setup that is looking behind you. So if you're tracking someone who's walking forwards, you don't need a spotter, you don't need to walk backwards. Pretty cool. Let me know in the comments what you think. Is this something that you would try out? I've put links to most of the items that I've used here in the description. Yeah, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.